Hey, what's going on guys? It's Young here, and today I'm back in our Fortnite video, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys the best binds, or also show you guys how to pick the binds that's going to be right for you, whether you play with a Scuf controller, Elite controller, whether you play claw, double claw, non-claw. I'm going to be giving you guys some really good tips to pick good binds, or maybe if you want to change binds, just give you guys some of my suggestions when it comes to it. And real quick before we get into the video, up on the screen I have the winner of the V-Buck giveaway of this week. I'm going to be giving away some more V-Bucks next week, so if you guys want a chance to enter that giveaway and win some free V-Bucks, all you guys have to do is to drop a like on this video. Make sure you guys do subscribe to the channel, turn on my post notifications so you guys get notified for each and every new video, and also leave a comment down below of either your Xbox gamer tag, your PSN gamer tag, or Epic account, and you guys will automatically be entered into the next giveaway. So make sure you guys do enter if you guys want a chance to win some free V-Bucks. And alright guys, let's go right to the video. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to give you guys some of my suggestions when it comes to picking new binds, or if you're just looking for, I guess, the binds that I have. I'll be showing you guys the binds that I have and what I would recommend, because it is going to be different for every person, depending, because some of you guys don't play on, you just play normal controller, no claw, anything like that. Some of you guys do play claw, some of you guys play double claw, which I don't even know how it's possible, but some of you guys play that, some of you guys play on a Scuf controller, Elite controller. So I'm going to give you guys all of my suggestions when it comes to those binds, and just some different things that you should really keep in mind when you are choosing your binds, because no matter what binds you have, there is a few certain things that you want to do no matter what, I guess, what you're playing on. And so here, I'm just going to show you guys all the binds that I have really quick. And just to keep in mind, I do have an Elite controller, so I use all four of the paddles on the back. So of course, if you don't play on that, then having these exact same binds isn't going to work for you. It's going to be a little bit different. So just take that with a grain of salt, just in case you guys were curious on what binds I had. These are the ones, or the exact binds that I'm using. Like I said, I play with the Elite controller, and I use all four of my paddles. And when it comes to the mapping on those paddles, I have jump, build, edit, and pickaxe. So my pickaxe is going to be on the top left. My jump is on the bottom left. The bottom right is my switch mode, my builds. And then my top right is going to be my editing. Those are the paddles that I use. I use an Elite 2 controller. So those are the maps, or the button mapping, button binds, whatever they're called. That's exactly what I'm using for my controller. So of course, if you don't play on Elite controller, use all four of your paddles, your controller binds aren't going to be looking exactly like mine. They're going to be a little bit different. And I want to give you guys some suggestions that I think are going to be very helpful when choosing the correct binds for yourself. So the first thing that you want to do, that you want to keep in mind, is you always want to have the least restriction on your movement as possible. And especially if you guys play controller, which, I guess a lot of you, all you guys who are watching the video play controller. So if you guys play controller, then you don't really want to restrict your right analog stick movement, because that's the analog stick that you're looking around to aim with and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to be moving that as much as possible. You don't want to take your finger off of it as much as possible. So you want to choose your controller binds in a way that you have the best movement possible without having to, you want to take your finger off the right analog stick as least as possible. And the best way, the absolute best way to do it is, I would say, where I'm going to give you guys probably 3 things that you want to have at the quickest access possible. So the first one, of course, is going to be jumping. You're going to be jumping all the time in Fortnite. And Fortnite's one of the games that I know a lot of you guys look up settings videos, bind videos, because there's just so many different buttons in this game. And something like jumping is one of those buttons that you hit over and over and over again in the game. So if you play on a regular controller, no claw, what's going to happen is, if you're trying to jump, you have to take your finger off the right analog stick. So if you're trying to crank 90s, if you're trying to do high ground retakes, it's going to be very problematic, because it's going to be very difficult to do so. So jumping, you have building, and I would say jumping, building, and editing are going to be the 3 most important binds that you need to have. And when you're choosing your binds, you want to make sure that your right analog stick isn't restricted whatsoever when it comes to those 3 buttons. So for me, like I said earlier, since I play an Elite 2 controller, I have on one of my paddles, I have jump. My bottom left one, my bottom right one is building. So I have jumping, building, and I also have editing on one of my paddles. So whenever I'm playing, I don't have any restriction whatsoever on my movement. I don't have the only time I take my finger off the right analog stick is when I'm picking up items, which most of the time, if you're picking up items, you're not in the middle of a gunfight. You don't have to really worry about trying to track the other player when you are picking up stuff. So that really isn't that much of an issue. So like I said, jumping, building, and also editing are the three major things that you want to make sure that you have the least restriction possible on the right analog stick when you are choosing those binds, because movement in this game is one of the biggest and most important things that you can have, especially for those guys who play on controller. It is the most important thing to have, and the reason being is because it is a advantage over PC players, because they only really have 8 directions, because you have the WASD and then you have the mouse. You can have double movement binds. A lot of pros are starting to do that, but before and a lot of people still don't actually utilize that now, the double movement binds, so their movement isn't as good. So making sure you have the best movement possible is going to give you an advantage and a leg up against a lot of players in this game. And of course, not playing claw or not having any sort of elite controller, Scuf controller is going to be a little bit more difficult, especially for you guys who just play regular, just because you really only have 2 other buttons. You have the left analog stick that you can click and the right analog stick you can click. And the good thing is you can put auto run on, so you don't have to take up an extra bind on your left analog stick to sprint. So you have auto sprint on, and then I would try anything between jumping, building, and editing. And probably what I would recommend is I would have your edit button on the left stick, and then I would have the jump on the right stick. And you just kind of have to sacrifice your switch mode and put it on B, or maybe, yeah, that's probably your best bet right there, to have the jumping and editing on your analog sticks, and then for your switch mode just to have it on B. And another thing that I wanted to be talking about is when it comes to the Scuf controller versus the elite controller, the Scuf controller, the paddles, they're just not good compared to the elite. If I'm going to be 100% honest and non-biased, I've had both controllers. The Scuf controller is not very easy to hit the buttons very quickly, so you want to be careful as well. So you really, maybe as far as your buttons, you only want to have something you don't press that often, but still often enough. It's kind of tricky though. I don't know what the new ones, or the new Scuf controllers, if they gotten a little bit better. But when I had a Scuf controller, I think I had the Infinity, I believe, the paddles compared to the Elite 2, because when I first got the controller, the paddles were, the first time I ever had paddles, I thought they were amazing. But compared to the paddles on the Elite controller, they are absolutely terrible and very, very hard to press consistently. And if you're playing like a game like Call of Duty where you only have to jump every so often, it's not a big deal. But when you are playing Fortnite and you're constantly jumping, building, and editing, it gets a little bit tricky because the paddles are very difficult to press over and over and over again. So it does get a little bit tricky when you are using a Scuf controller, but you really want to find binds that you feel comfortable with and that doesn't restrict your movement in any sort of way. And also, another really good to pick your binds is there's a ton of very good players who play claws, a ton of very, very good players who play double claw, non-claw, and I would really recommend trying or really looking at their videos, seeing what binds they use. I give my suggestions as far as you want to always make sure that you have movement. That's going to be the biggest key. It doesn't matter if you play keyboard and mouse, whatever you play, that's going to be the best tip I can give you when it comes to picking your binds. If you just want to pick them yourself, you always want to make sure your movement is unrestricted. But like I said earlier, I do play with an elite controller and use all 4 paddles. So if you guys have an elite controller and use all of your paddles, the binds that I have, I'd really recommend. I think they're very, very good. I know some people do edit with left stick. Personally, I just like to use my upper right paddle, and which can be kind of weird for some people, but personally, I like it. I think it feels very comfortable. Just the way I press it just makes sense. So of course, I can give you my suggestions when it comes to the elite controller and using paddles, because I do play on that myself. But as far as players who play double claw or non-claw, I did make a video on some good binds to have that I talked to some of my friends, and I've also seen some videos for non-claw players. But seeing what some of the best claw players, seeing what some of the best double claw players use can give you a very good idea on what binds people, because a lot of people use somewhat similar binds. Not everyone's the same, especially, there's always going to be a few differences between players, but most of the time, a lot of their binds are going to be pretty similar in some sort of way. And there is a lot of popular binds like editing on left stick, which I think is very, very good if you don't use a paddle or anything like that, because otherwise, otherwise on controller, you would have to take your finger off the analog stick. And when it comes to editing, you really want to make sure you have good movement when you are editing, because it's one of those things that you just do so often in this game and it's so crucial. But those are going to be my suggestions when it comes to picking up or switching your binds. And so like I said earlier, I do play with a elite controller, 4 paddles. So with the binds I had at the very beginning, I would recommend if you guys do play on that. But other than that, you always want to make sure you're movements unrestricted, and you can see what other very, very good players use as well to give you guys some suggestions. But with that being said, now to wrap up for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys liked it, make sure you guys do hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, turn on my post notifications so you guys are notified for every single new video. And alright guys, I'll see you next video.